Folks, Strandkeeper96600 here. Someday I will catch up with these Adventure Time reviews. Hopefully this weekend. I've already had one person request that I review 1000 plus Grables, which I will definitely do. But in the sake of doing things in order, I decided to go ahead and talk about Chips and Ice Cream first, which is the episode that aired last week. Yeah, this is a weird one. I found that I didn't like this episode as much as the previous ones, but I find that the main thing I feel about this is it's mostly kind of hard to talk about and analyze because it seems like it's not the weirdest Adventure Time episode that has aired in season 6, not by a long shot. And I find it so funny, like how many people on Tumblr are saying how weird this is and how it doesn't make any sense and how, this is like, I don't get it, I just don't get it. And like, we've seen weird shit this season, like with Lemongrab's mind trip thing in the mountain and like the dentisty ants and dentist and like the gold star stuff and like we've seen weirder and more surreal stuff, and it just cracks me up that chips and ice cream is what mind fucks everybody. Even though it's a pretty simple premise, even though I feel like it relies on word salad a lot, but the premise itself is pretty simple. This guy who Finn, Jake, and BMO meet, mostly at BMO's insistence, has cursed to have these little doodads on his head. And he transfers the curse onto Jake. And so now Jake has those dudes on his head. And the bear, who originally had them, whose name is Morty Rogers, slowly, I guess because of Stockholm Syndrome or something, slowly, obsesses more and more over them. Well, meanwhile, BMO slowly figures out how to get them off of Jake's head. That's it. And, I feel like I could trim that down to 25 words if I wanted, if that wasn't 25 words. And, the premise itself, it's simple, but there's so many, little weird things that help make it weird. For instance, the two little dudes, one only says the word chips and the other only says ice cream. It's like this Pokemon speak thing where they have entire dialogues that are actually... I went on TV Tropes and I found out that in the storyboard for this episode, a lot of their dialogue is translated. It has in parentheses what they're actually saying. But they do carry on full conversations with each other and with BMO, and that's made of just those 3 words. And, I found that a lot of people find this really annoying. I wasn't annoyed by it, really. I was just watching it, thinking this is weird, but I wasn't terribly annoyed by it. I think the reason for that is that I grew up watching Pokemon, so, entire conversations made of 2 words is something, I'm kind of used to. I remember a couple months ago, we actually watched one of the Pokemon movies for fun, and, we realized that all those Pokemon, they all have voice actors. They have to call someone and say, okay, you have to say the word Blossom, 50 different ways, and, make it sound like you're saying something. And, this person, if you're a voice actor, one thing Richard Horvitz said at a panel once is that you can't be self-conscious at all, so they have to come in and be like, okay, Blossom, just over and over, and, they have, so this was probably, I feel like, again, this isn't the weirdest thing they've asked a voice actor in Adventure Time to do, but I want to know what it was like in the room when this episode was pitched. So, there are these guys on this bear's ears, and they, are his ears, but only because of a curse, and they're actually insubstantial beings, and they only ever say chips and ice cream. Yeah, the fact that they only ever say that, I feel like it feels like Adventure Time sort of feels like it has to be obligatorily weird now. I don't think obligatorily is a word. But anyway, they feel like there's a weirdness quota they have to meet. I feel like this episode actually would have been less annoying if the language of the 2 ears was something like, the minions from Despicable Me, or the the what are they called? Oh, the Jawas from Star Wars. Something that actually sounds like it might be words, but, something that's more fun to listen to than just chips and ice cream over and over. Another weird thing was that, the way this guy is introduced, BMO dragged them, Finn and Jake, to see this show with him. It kind of reminds me of, Like when you're a kid and you want to see a movie that's like for kids, of course your parents have to take you and sit with you in the theater. And so like my parents like they described to me when I was older the kind of existential dread that came over them when I begged them to take me to see Pokemon 2000. That's twice Pokemon has come up in like 6 minutes. That's weird. And so it reminds me of that, like the parents have to like sit through this weird like movie or show or like puppet show or whatever that this kid is making them sit through, and like that's what that reminded me of. But that leads me to the problem. I've already spoken of two things from my childhood that this reminds me of, and though they both had to do with Pokemon, they were two totally different things. And I feel like that's the main problem with this episode, is that it feels unfocused. Like, you'd think the focus of it would be the guy trying to get the dudes back. It's not really. He only has like 2 scenes. You'd think the point of the episode would be BMO trying to get rid of them. Not really. That's only the last scene. Throughout, BMO feels like he's trying to figure out something about chips and ice cream, but we're not told what it is. The weird thing is that, finding out what the chips and ice cream are saying in the storyboards both works in favor of this episode and works against it, because we don't know what they're saying. If you don't look it up, you're not going to care, but if you do look it up, there's actually like something sweet about it, about figuring out what they're saying and having that eureka moment. For instance, the thing with the bird at the end, chips and ice cream are in that show and like a bird comes by, like a puppet bird on a stick, and they kiss it. Apparently part of their dialogue is them like wanting, they want to be free, and one of them asks the other, do you think we'll ever see a real bird? And like BMO, when BMO wakes them up, before BMO can even understand them, I think Chips is saying to Ice Cream, this guy's going to free us. He's going to help us see a real bird. So it was their dream to see a real bird, and they accomplished it at the end. And that's really sweet to figure out in hindsight, but like if you don't go to look up, it seems like it's a treat or a reward for people who look up behind the scenes stuff, but it's totally lost if you don't, and like most people I feel like wouldn't. There, I think the reason this episode feels weird is because people are watching it not really sure where it's going, in addition to the lack of focus thing. With Jermaine, you didn't 100% know where it was going, but I feel like there was a real kernel, like there was a focus to it. It was about Jermaine's relationship with Jake's parents, and about how, like, you know, how he's been isolating himself while Finn and Jake are having fun, and like the burden blames on himself, and like it was, you could say very easily what the point of this episode was. This one, it feels like it's trying to have too many points, and there are too many distracting things to it that it never comes together as a whole. And I get it, not every episode needs to come together as a whole. I don't think Jake the Brick really came together as a whole. And I feel like there are other episodes, I'm sort of drawing a blank on what they were, that, you know, it felt like the Graybles episodes, you know, they're tied together with a theme, but they're mostly supposed to be vignettes. But, this one, I think people are so busy searching for the theme or the symbolism or whatever, then when it seems harder to find, people, like, just kind of get stuck on it instead of just taking it for what it is. And like I said, there's a bunch of weird stuff. For instance, there's, like, a few jokes that I don't get, or I feel like that aren't fully developed. Like, there's one bit with that guy, John. I don't know what's up with John, if that's like an inside joke or something. Like he sells ice cream, but it's all like really weird flavors, like taco and pizza, and like at one point Morty is holding bacon and eggs flavor. Like I don't get it. What's the joke? He's selling weird ice cream so and like John, by the way, is like super friendly, and he's like, "You guys have an awesome day. You're so awesome." Like, I don't get it. What are you saying? Is this an inside joke? Am I not in on it? I don't know. I'm confused. Is this based on somebody you know? Did this person win a contest? The thing about John, though, is I'm pretty sure John is supposed to be a trans man, which is kind of cool, I guess, that they have, like, characters. Like, nobody points out, like, because John's voice is, like, he's clearly a dude and looks like a dude, but his voice is, like, super high-pitched, and, like, it doesn't... If you saw a picture of that guy, you would not think he sounds like that. So, like, yeah, I guess he's supposed to be trans, and, like, the thing I love about it is that nobody ever points it out or says there's anything weird about him. Like, people just go up and buy stuff from him, and, like, he talks to other people, and, like, you know, nobody thinks anything of it. So I think that's kind of a nice bit of representation. I think like the best way to represent people, minorities, is to like just have them there and like not treat them as though having them there is a big deal. Like, you know, just carry on. Like, Adventure Time already has BMO, who is a gender fluid character. They already have a history of breaking the gender binary or something, so I guess that's what that was. That was kind of cool, but it was mostly. I feel like that scene and that character in particular, the whole thing comes across as just kind of weird. Like, okay, and he only shows up in that one scene. The one thing that I do really like about this episode was Morty, who I think he was really funny. At first, I didn't like him because he seemed like really shady. But like I love how bombastic he gets about missing chips and ice cream, and like where he first transfers them onto Jake. He goes, "I'm free," and he like does the most maniacal laugh I've ever heard in Adventure Time, which is saying something. And then he immediately throws himself headfirst out the window, and then he runs away with his arms in the air. Like, I like that kind of slapstick, silly humor. And also when he sees Jake, and he's with the chips and ice cream on his head, and he's like, "You can't make me take them back!" And Jake is like, "Oh, hi, Morty." And then Morty runs away, knocking over fruit stands and stuff. Like, I love... Maybe it's because I watched Invader Zim, but I love characters that are so in your face, especially with the most mundane things. And there are a few, like, subtle things I like about him. For instance, I like when he's in his home and, like, where he's eating beans because he feels like that's what normal bears eat, and like when he like turns on the music and dances awkwardly. They never say what he's doing, but I think it's pretty obvious that he's trying to carry on normally without that intrusion in his life, or he's trying to be happy, or he's trying to feel like do what he does feels like normal people do. And really like that they were able to convey all that without ever saying that's what he's trying to do. I also kind of... Some people notice there's a photo of him and a white rabbit on the desk. And, like, I sort of feel like there's some sort of backstory there that isn't gone into. Like, at the beginning, it's a bunch of rabbit children who are watching a show, and it seems like the lady rabbit who comes to pick them up, it looks similar to the rabbit in his picture. So, like, is that an ex-girlfriend? Did she break up with him because of the curse? Like, that's more interesting. I feel like there are a million things that are more interesting in this episode. Like, there are a bunch of different elements, and if they chose to develop an episode about one of them, we would have had something much stronger. Like, how these things have ruined the bear's life. That would be interesting. At one point, the bear apologizes to them for keeping them prisoner, even though their presence has driven him insane. Like, the idea that they're both prisoners to each other. Like, Chips and Ice Cream develop Stockholm Syndrome on him because they kiss him before they fly away. Like, they sort of had this weird coexistence. That would be interesting. Yeah, like... bunch of stuff. But as it is, it just comes across as kind of a jumbled mess. One thing I do like, another thing I kind of like, is how super chill Jake was. This isn't the first time Jake has been super chill about something, but the presence of Chips and Ice Cream, because they never shut up, it's driving Finn nuts. And but Jake, the guy who has to actually live with it, is totally okay, and he's just carrying on. He goes to the store and he makes a sandwich with them, being really annoying, but he doesn't notice because he's Jake and he's super chill. Like when he told Finn to just stay afoot, or when he lost his powers and he was okay with it for a while. Like, that's a trait Jake's had for a long time, and I like that they're able to keep it consistent. I feel like having Finn be annoyed by Chips and Ice Cream helped a little, but intentionally annoying is still annoying. There are so many things I feel like they could have done to fix it, and it's a shame when an episode doesn't work, like when it loses you, even though it isn't unsalvageable. I will say that this might be my least favorite episode of Season 6 so far, with the exception of maybe Sad Face. But even Sad Face was more focused. But I feel like this isn't the worst episode of Adventure Time overall. That would be Web Weirdos. Okay, that's the one I hate the most. And, like, for me, it hasn't even reached nearly the level of badness that episode is. Like, this one was at least pretty. It at least had likable elements. And, it was at least had a few things that made me laugh. So, for what it's worth, Chips and Ice Cream, not this season's best, But I'm excited to see where they go from there. And hey, they can't all be winners. So hopefully you'll get 1,000 plus Graybulls out soon. Until then, Dragon Keeper 19600 signing off.